Thank you Marvel Snap for sponsoring this video. Guys, I'm not a scientist, but I do love aspects of the multiverse. Think about it. There's a universe out there with a Gerard who isn't completing games or losing his mind weekly. But the upside of this universe is that we also have this video sponsor, Marvel Snap, a fast and frenetic card game that makes use of Marvel's entire multiverse of variants, displaying awesome art and incredible powers. The game is always adding new cards to collect in your deck in a wide array of styles, and with so many cards every season, you'll be kept on your feet as you try to employ new strategies over the 6 turns of play. I know so often with mobile games like this, you'd have every reason to be wary of some gross pay-to-win meta, but Marvel Snap makes you work for your cards, and card upgrades are merely cosmetic. Marvel Snap is available now for both mobile and Steam in early access. Your account can be merged across both, so all cards, upgrades, progress, and rank carry over no matter what the platform. Check our link in the description box down below right now to download Marvel Snap today. Again, I'm no scientist, but I appreciate Marvel Snap for sponsoring our video, and it would mean the world to me if you would check it out. Now, back to the video.
Some nightmares are more than mere bad dreams. Some hunt us long after we think we've woken up. Some we may not even want to wake up from. Such is the case with From Software's BloodBorne. Despite slowly creeping toward a decade of existence, it remains one of the most iconic games in a long line of memorable titles by a developer known for crafting masterpieces. Whether it was the creepy, convoluted world and lore of Yharnam, the thrill of challenging combat, the spine-tingling sound design, or something else entirely that drew you in. If you're craving more, you are not alone in your BloodBorne lust. And it just so happens that I know of a few indie games that just might satisfy that craving for a time. Starting with the Healing Church plays a prominent role in BloodBorne. Its importance, among other things, underscored by its physical prominence in the world itself. The church literally looms over Yharnam, its shadow stretching far across the doomed city. Blasphemous, a third-person action-adventure game by the Game Kitchen, takes this sort of religious commentary and iconography to the next level, along with the gore. In Blasphemous, players step into the grim role of the Penitent One, whose conical headgear bears a strong resemblance to the gold Ardeo helmet worn by Bloodborne's executioners, which itself was probably a reference to Silent Hill's Pyramid Head. This is fitting, as guilt and suffering are core elements of both Blasphemous and Bloodborne's narratives. As the Penitent One, your task is to complete a holy pilgrimage through the fictional realm of Custodia, a task which just so happens to be involved with slaughtering a ton of bestial baddies along the way. It's up to you to free the realm from a vicious, unending cycle of death, rebirth, and suffering that has mentally and physically warped residents into violent monstrosities. And so, you must fight your way to the heart of the problem, a supernatural entity known as the Grievous Miracle, and destroy it, thus breaking the cycle. Now, I won't get much deeper into the story here because Blasphemous is full of deep, dark rabbit holes. If your favorite thing about BloodBorne was digging up dirty secrets and unraveling the game's many, many mysteries, Blasphemous just might be the answer to your prayers. The setting of Blasphemous is more medieval than Victorian, and the crisp retro-style pixel art is a sharp contrast to Bloodborne's grimy, gloomy realism. Both games, however, are grim dark as hell, with disturbing gothic and body horror elements woven throughout. Including DLC, Blasphemous offers 3 possible endings, one considered good, one bad, and one true ending. If you're looking for happily ever after, you've come to the wrong place. Unlike your hunter in Bloodborne, the Penitent One is bound mainly to one weapon, the Mea Culpa, a sword born of guilt itself. You can, however, strengthen the Mea Culpa at shrines. You'll find these shrines throughout your journey. These shrines also allow you to unlock new combat abilities, such as a deadly dash attack that renders the Penitent One briefly invulnerable. Collecting Tears of Atonement gives you currency to spend at shops on items such as Mea Culpa hearts, relics, and rosary beads, which can be equipped to further improve your sword and boost your stats, and bioflasks, which restore health. Instead of a pistol in your offhand, the Penitent One's secondary weapon is the holy magic of prayer. Prayers, essentially spells, are powered by fervor. You build up your fervor meter in much of the same way you regain health in Bloodborne, by laying waste to your enemies. The more damage you can deal, and more quickly, the better. Should you die, instead of dropping blood echoes at the site of your death, you drop guilt fragments. Upon dropping one, you'll be saddled with penalties like reduced maximum fervor and scarcer rewards for defeating enemies. You'll have to either reclaim your guilt fragments or pay a fee at certain special locations to remove these penalties. Checkpoints also function as rest points, at which you can replenish your health and bioflasks. As for the boss fights, let's just say if you love discovering new and increasingly terrible monstrosities to take down in BloodBorne, then you've come to the right place. The Rogues Gallery of Big Bads in Blasphemous includes monsters like the decaying corpse of an exhumed archbishop and a giant blind baby who bawls his non-existent eyes out while attempting to rip you limb from limb. Yeah, if that's not nightmare fuel, I don't know what is. The story that Blasphemous tells is ultimately a lonely one. The penitent one is the last of their kind, the lone survivor of a brutal massacre, and the only soul capable of changing or sealing the fate of the entire realm. Not to worry, if you're feeling a little lonely yourself and you're missing Bloodborne's multiplayer mode, you can always check out the next game on this list. Remnant from the Ashes by Gunfire Games is a third-person action shooter that, like Bloodborne, presents itself as one kind of story only to devolve slowly into something stranger with a lot more tentacles than you might have been expecting. Remnant from the Ashes is set in the dusty remains of a post-apocalyptic future. The root of all evil turns out, quite fittingly, to be an interdimensional evil thing known as the Root, which has overrun the world and drained it dry of its resources. As one of a dwindling population of scrappy human survivors, your goal is to make your way to the tower at the heart of the corruption, where you hope to destroy the Root once and for all. Now, this game is light on story and lore, but offers greater variety and customization than Blasphemous. You get to create your own character here with 3 classes to choose from. Scrappers for those who prefer close quarter combat, hunters who fight from afar, and ex-cultists who fall somewhere between the two. In both Bloodborne and Remnant from the Ashes, combat is fast and furious. This time, however, gunplay is king. You can wield up to 2 guns in addition to your melee weapon. There are many types of guns to choose from, and all of them can be customized using mods. Although Remnant from the Ashes follows a set story, physical progress is non-linear. Throughout the game, multiple worlds open up for players to explore at their leisure. Like Bloodborne's Root Chalice dungeons, these new worlds are procedurally generated, making each expedition unique. Remnant from the Ashes allows you to play with up to 2 other friends online. Difficulty is scaled according to how many players are in the game to maintain a reasonable level of challenge. Unlike Bloodborne, the only penalty for death in Remnant from the Ashes is being sent back to your last checkpoint. You don't lose any points or equipment. You can adjust the overall difficulty of the game between 3 settings: normal, hard, and nightmare. And yet the combat does offer a decent challenge, even on normal mode. If you are more into Bloodborne's battles and dungeons than getting to know the bats and the belfries, Remnant from the Ashes offers several worlds full of eldritch enemies ripe for the reaping. If, on the other hand, you enjoy Bloodborne's gameplay, but you need a break from all that horror and gore, you might be happier playing this title. Now, this next game, I actually did a completionist video on, and I think you guys would like it. At first glance, Death's Door looks like it would be much more of a at-home kind of game in the list of casual, cozy fantasy games than this menagerie of Souls-like horrors. An adorable-looking sequel to Acid Nerve's debut game Titan Souls, it's a top-down action-adventure game that mimics and challenges From Software's go-to gameplay formulas, and it has more in common with Bloodborne than you might think. In Death's Door, you take on the role of a small crow who works for the Reaping Commission headquarters. As you guessed it, a Grim Reaper. During a routine soul collection at the start of the game, an old crow intervenes, telling the player that crows have been disappearing without explanation and that all is not as it seems back at the headquarters. This is the main mystery at the heart of the game, and of course, it's up to you to unravel it. Despite being relatively small and concise, the world building in Death's Door is rich and full of secrets. If you miss treasure hunting in Bloodborne, you'll probably enjoy unearthing all 24 of this game's collectibles as much as I did. Known as shiny things, the flavor text for each collectible offers some sort of context for the game's world and its inhabitants. And for truly intrepid explorers, a secret ending to the game can be unlocked by navigating a series of challenging post-credit puzzles and tasks. You begin the game with a sword and bow. Quick successive attacks with the sword refill your quiver, allowing you to shoot arrows and magical projectiles. Later in the game, other weapons become available, including a hammer, daggers, a great sword, and a discarded umbrella. Sadly, no, this isn't like the badass umbrellas from the 2018 film Shadow, but that just makes it all the more impressive if you manage to beat the game with it. Another way to get back health is by collecting and planting seeds. These will grow into health restoring plants that, even when used, will regrow over time. Now, as sweet as Death's Door may seem, it's easy to forget that it's all about death. Your cute little crow collects souls just like hunters in Yharnam collect blood echoes, spending them as currency for physical and magical upgrades. Just because your enemy's guts don't spill out when you kill them doesn't mean it isn't murder most foul. And like the lampposts in BloodBorne, Death's Door offers points of respite in the form of literal doors to and from the world of the dead. These checkpoints are where you spawn when you die. In this game, though, you don't have to worry about losing souls or progress. Instead, the challenge comes more from a need of precision. With limited options for healing, it's vital to reach each boss with as many hit points intact as possible. Shieldless once again, you'll need to be aggressive and efficient to keep moving forward. The more health you lose along the way, the harder it will be to survive that final encounter. Both BloodBorne and Death's Door use death and revival as part of the teaching process. Both games speak to the inevitability of death and the problems that arise from going to extremes to avoid it. BloodBorne's take on these themes, however, is as grim and dark as it gets. Death's Door takes a gentler approach, offering a Ghibli-esque aesthetic and a comforting light at the end of the tunnel. If you don't mind getting your hands dirty though, there's another game you'll want to try if you like playing like a crow-like character. If you're looking for a game that feels as close to BloodBorne as possible in terms of both aesthetics and narrative, then look no further than Overborder Studios' recently released debut title, Thymesia. Set in the plague-ridden world of the Kingdom of Hermes, Thymesia is cut from a very familiar cloth, specifically a blood-drenched cloth woven with threads of Victorian Gothic and Lovecraftian horror. You play as Corvus, an amnesiac plague doctor whose past and identity you gradually uncover as you investigate the secrets of Hermes itself. These secrets revolve around magical blood that infects the populace like some magical disease, evolving some residents into higher beings and others into beasts. Sound familiar? This time, however, you're a bit of a beast yourself. One of Corvus's talents is taking on the shape of a raven at will, hence his codename. As it was in BloodBorne, combat in Thymesia is a dance to the death that demands light feet and quick thinking. Precisely timed parries and dodges are key to avoiding damage and sometimes reflecting damage to your opponent. Timing your attacks just right enables you to not only kill your enemies, but also reave their plague weapons. These can come in very handy during boss fights. Thymesia's story, like BloodBorne's, is a twisty tale of conspiracies, blood, and monsters. But while there is lore to uncover, mostly in the form of notes scattered throughout the levels, the main secrets you'll be uncovering will be the obvious ones: Corvus's memories. It's not a huge game, and if you're hungry for more collectibles to gather or NPC character arcs to experience, you're kind of out of luck. But if you do like a good fight and you're the sort of person to do it for the aesthetic, few games model their visuals or combat so closely on BloodBorne as Thymesia does. But let's say you're also into 2D Metroidvania style side scrollers. In that case, you should take a look at You're probably not surprised to see Salt and Sanctuary by Ska Studios on this list. Often described as 2D Dark Souls, this side-scrolling RPG platformer draws heavy inspiration from FromSoft titles as well as the Castlevania series. In the world of Salt and Sanctuary, there are two types of people: the Lightborn and the Saltborn. Upon death, Saltborn are sent to the Isle of Salt, basically the hunter's dream if you will, while Lightborn simply cease to exist. You play as the Saltborn, thus neatly explaining your continued existence even after your inevitable demise. The story begins, as many good stories do, with the protagonist being shipwrecked on a mysterious island. One of your fellow passengers was a princess. When you do not find her amongst the wreckage, you set out to search the island for her, and as you explore, we get to know the island's inhabitants, some of whom have side quests for you, because the princess can wait a little longer to be rescued, am I right? She's probably in another castle anyways. The more you explore, the deeper you dig down into the truth about the people, the island, and your true role in this story. Salt and Sanctuary features pretty standard RPG character creation that involves a variety of cosmetic options as well as character classes. What class you choose determines your starting equipment and skills. You have 8 options to choose from, including a hunter that bears a striking resemblance to the one you played in Bloodborne. Salt and Sanctuary brings back classic Souls like shield and blocking, but like Bloodborne favors aggressive combat. Shields are optional, by the way. There are over 600 usable items in the game, and these include a variety of two-handed weapons if that's more your jam. Combat requires precision and perfect timing. Defeating enemies grants Salt, this game's version of Blood Echoes, as well as lootable items such as healing blood vials, another Bloodborne callback. If you die, you lose your salt to the nearest enemy, and you must find and defeat them to win your salt back. Unlike the open world of Yharnam, Salt and Sanctuary is a fairly linear experience, but the few choices you do make determine which of the 2 endings you can unlock. Additionally, like Bloodborne and other FromSoft games, Salt and Sanctuary offers a wealth of secrets and lore to unearth while completing quests. Like Bloodborne, Salt and Sanctuary is ultimately a Lovecraftian tale wearing the mask of another genre. In this case, a grimdark fantasy. But if you prefer your Cthulhu theming front and center, may I suggest... Unlike many of the titles on this list, this investigative horror game by Frogwares isn't a Souls-like. If it's Bloodborne's combat or RPG elements you're looking for more of in this case, look elsewhere. But if you just can't get enough of eldritch horror and lore, The Sinking City will be a worthy addition to your collection. Set in the fictional city of Oakmont, Massachusetts, sometime in the 1920s, The Sinking City is all about that Lovecraft vibes. You play as Charles Reed, a private eye who's come to the cursed city to discover the reason and the cure for the haunting visions that plague him night and day. Because you're in a gumshoe's shoes, combat in the Sinking City is purposely clumsy, closer to an early Silent Hill game than a FromSoft title. You're encouraged to avoid conflict whenever possible. There aren't even real boss fights to speak of. Instead, the main tension exists between Reed and the town itself, which is less than eager to give up its secrets to a stranger. Reed's approach to detective work is careful and methodical. Exactly how observant and insightful you are will determine his ultimate fate. Throughout the game, you'll interview residents while combing through each area for clues. Improving your investigative skills will help you uncover more evidence. Visiting archives and analyzing your findings via your casebook, meanwhile, will allow you to build a thorough and hopefully accurate portrait of the truth. Just like Bloodborne, The Sinking City refuses to explain itself outright. If you want to fully understand the lore, leave no stone or occult statue unturned. The Cthulhu mythos is an ocean of sinister secrets, and the open world of The Sinking City is literally drowning in them. But as the saying goes, when you stare into the abyss, it stares right back into your beady little human eyes, slowly driving you mad. The deeper you delve into Oakmont's mysteries, the more your sanity will drain, and the lower it goes, the harder it gets for Reed to focus on his investigation. Like Bloodborne, The Sinking City takes an old familiar formula and puts its own spin on it. However, if you're looking for something a little further out of left field without losing that Lovecraftian core, consider playing Sucker for Love First Date, a visual novel by Akabaka, is the Doki Doki Literature Club of cosmic horror games. At first blush, it looks like nothing more than a sickly sweet dating sim in which you woo anthropomorphized elder gods. Having played this game for myself with the Scary Game Squad, let me warn you right now, don't fall for its supposed charms. By the end of this game, you'll be lucky to escape with your sanity. Not your character's sanity, your sanity intact. In this warped but loving parody, you play as a young man who's obsessed with the occult and haunted by visions of eldritch terrors. Upon obtaining an authentic copy of the Necronomicon, you suddenly summon Lynetta, an elder god who proves that the impossible is possible after all. A face full of tentacles can actually look cute. From here on out, Sucker for Love slowly but surely sucks you into a downward spiral of humor, horror, and depending on your choices, a rather morbid love story. In other words, if you always wished Bloodborne had a romantic mechanic, is this the game for you? Now, look, there's no real combat or exploration in Sucker for Love. There are secrets to discover, secrets that can open up new options and perhaps even change your fate. And although you might not be engaging in any direct hand-to-tentacle combat, gameplay might be much more challenging than you'd expect from a game with such a disarmingly bright and bubbly veneer. As with most dating sim games, there are multiple routes to pursue based on the choices you make, and a variety of unlockable endings. But there are also interactive point-and-click segments that ramp up both the intrigue and the tension. At first, these seem too innocuous. Simple scavenger hunts for various occult objects needed to perform spells from the Necronomicon. But before long, these leisurely jaunts evolve into panic-inducing races against time, in which you must accurately complete the steps of complex rituals from the Necronomicon, or meet a grisly end. As adorable as the girls for Sucker of Love might look, their eldritch minds are as dark and twisted as the one it took to think up this game. One minute they're blushing and batting their eyes at you, the next they're ripping your heart out and eating it right in front of you. And that's on a good day. On a bad day, you might find a ghastly set of tentacles growing out of your own face, or you might look in the mirror to see you no longer have a face at all. Like BloodBorne, Sucker for Love pulls no punches when it comes to body horror. And if by the end you're ready for another date, you're in luck. A sequel titled Sucker for Love: Date to Die For is expected to release later this year. But if you're looking for something a little more gloomier, I've got one last recommendation just for you. One last Metroidvania Souls-like for the road. I'm gonna ruin the developer's name, so I'm really sorry. Unworthy, developed by Alexander Kuzmanovic, is a 2D side-scrolling platformer without jumping that combines retro-style pixel art with Bloodborne-esque gameplay. Unworthy's story is a gridmark tale in which we are once again faced with the fallout from the heretical actions of a corrupt church. It begins with the nameless protagonist's death and resurrection. Freshly risen from the grave, it seems that you've been summoned back to life by the god of filth. Your task is to purge sin from the world and restore peace and equilibrium. As you did in Bloodborne, you'll spend the rest of the game piecing together most of the lore on your own. Despite mimicking FromSoft's famously subtle approach to narrative, Unworthy sidesteps Bloodborne's open world and non-linear progression in favor of a more focused and straightforward approach. The lore runs deep, but the game itself is bite-sized in comparison to your epic journey through Yharnam. This doesn't mean the road ahead of you is without its twists and turns, however. Inevitably, you'll find yourself faced with an impassable obstacle that you'll need a special weapon or skill to overcome. And more often than not, this will mean taking down one of Unworthy's 10 named bosses to acquire what you need, which, as you might expect, is typically no easy feat. Unworthy incorporates many of the elements you'd expect from any decent Souls-like experience, like bonfires to activate checkpoints. Combat is swift and brutal. You have a shield this time, but your limited stamina pool means you'll need to time both your defensive and offensive maneuvers carefully if you want to survive. Death is not the end though. You'll just start over at your most recent checkpoint, a few sins short, but no poorer in terms of experience points. In Bloodborne, the color palette was your typical Victorian Gothic spectrum, composed mostly of dark browns, rusty reds, and inky blacks. Unworthy is monochrome, its world painted in shades of gray, with the occasional brilliant red blood spatter for a splash of panache. The relative lack of color emphasizes each game's heavy atmosphere and grim narrative while cranking the spook factor up a notch. Unworthy is best for Bloodborne fans who prize quality combat experiences above all else. And there you have it, 8 indie games that might tide you over while you wait for your next favorite FromSoft game to be released. Because we all know that even if Bloodborne 2 ever does happen, it'll probably not happen soon enough. Are there any other indie games like Bloodborne you wish we'd include on this list? How about other AAA games you'd like to see us do in the future with recommendations for indie games? Be sure to let us know in the comments down below. Otherwise, thanks for watching. See you all next time.